Big news, big games. If you're old like me, you remember when Nintendo decided to go with cartridge-based format again for the Nintendo 64, and Square decided that they wanted to make Final Fantasy bigger, bolder, do more with the franchise, and the CD format of the PlayStation 1 allowed that to happen, and Final Fantasy went from Nintendo to Sony, and ever since then, it has been synonymous with PlayStation platforms. It's gotten the most success there, it's sold the most copies there, and it has a huge fan base spawning generation after generation, console generation after console generation. Let's get the ugly stuff out of the way first. List wars. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot just want games added to a list, get them, and then move on to the next so that the list looks good. You've got to actually play games. You've got to actually show support. And I know this is a point of contention for some people, but Final Fantasy, a lot of Japanese role-playing games just don't get that level of support on certain other platforms besides PlayStation. If you want support, you've got to buy, you've got to play games. Not everyone is putting their games in subscription services. So if you want content, you've got to purchase content, you've got to play content, you've got to show support. My idea would be, if you're on a platform that traditionally doesn't get Final Fantasy or a lot of Japanese role-playing style games, Crisis Core is coming to everything, and it is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. That is why I believe that game is coming to everything. They're testing the waters. It's not in a subscription service. You've got to go out, you've got to purchase it, and you've got to play it. Final Fantasy Crisis Core is probably going to sell a few million copies on the PlayStation 5, and if it sells, say, 1 million copies, both boxed and digitally on other platforms, I'm sure that Final Fantasy VII Remake and the entire trilogy will come to other platforms. Having said that, this is absolutely huge news, finding out that the continuation of the Final Fantasy VII story is essentially going to be 3 games. The first I spoke of earlier, it is fantastic. I'm actually going to go back and play it again on the PlayStation 5. I believe it's called Intergrade. It's an updated version of the PlayStation 5. I just haven't gotten around to it, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks really cool. I like the alternate timeline. I like seeing some characters that you were thinking were dead. I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't played it yet. Come back. I like the idea of trying to weave together all these alternate dimensions and sort of different stories. It almost reminds me of something like a Marvel movie where you've got all these characters that are dead and then all of a sudden they're alive again because there's some alternate dimension or something like that. But Crisis Core is the one that I think is going to be the most exciting because you get to see what happened leading up to Final Fantasy VII. You get to see Zack. You get to see the origin of the Buster Sword. And graphically, I'm going to say it again because that's the key word here. A lot of these games are being built ground up for these new systems, and it looks absolutely incredible. I mean, if you played the game on the PSP a long time ago, it's kind of a weird game. The story is just really strange and odd, and I'm interested to see if people are going to be receptive to it that haven't played it before, or if they change anything. I don't think that they're going to. But just getting a prequel on everything, I think that's Square testing the water. I really do. I think that if you're a part of an audience that's never experienced Final Fantasy VII before, why get Final Fantasy VII Remake? Why not just get the first game, the prequel to that game, and then lead you into it? I don't want to go back to that, the topic that we were talking about earlier, but support. You've got to buy these games. You've got to play these games. Tons of screenshots, free advertising, excitement. It can't just be about saying, all right, we've got 20 games here, let's make it 21. All right, we got 21, let's move on to the next. You've got to pay, you've got to play, period. I'm excited about this news. Final Fantasy VII. I love the idea of these really genre-defining games from the past coming back, finding new audiences or getting old audiences really excited again. This is huge news. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What do you think the third game is going to be called? There's a lot of speculation. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to jump out there and tell you what I think the third game is going to be called. But next winter, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming to the PlayStation 5 and Crisis Core is coming to everything, and I hope everybody plays Crisis Core. And remember, if you've never given someone your money before in the past, it's not a threat today to tell them, well, you're not going to give them your money, because you never did. Get out there, play these games, buy Crisis Core, play it, get excited about it. These games, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the third game will come to all platforms. I'm excited about this game. I can't wait to jump back into Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let me know what you think about all of this huge announcement. These are huge games, and they are, again, genre-defining games. These are why people play on console. These are the games that get people excited. Let me know what you think in the comments section below about this announcement. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.